All right, hello, seventh graders. Welcome back. So we are done with the Protestant Reformation. If you've answered all the Jupiter questions and done the videos and all that, you are set to go. We are going to move on to the Age of Exploration. And this is from Europe's perspective. In the back, we have kind of a map of the different places we're going to go about. Europe first started moving out, trying to get trade routes to China and their goods, India, getting into Africa and to the Americas, South and North America and Central America. And when we say Europe, we mean Spain, Portugal, and England, and France and Holland. So not just England. We're talking about Spain and Portugal and all these other places as well, Italy. And so as we get into this, I want to make sure that I thank you guys for your hard work so far. I hope that everyone's been able to understand the transition we're making away from a video, a Google Doc worksheet, and one Jupiter question to make it simple by eliminating the worksheet, eliminating the Google Doc, and just the video. Watch the video and answer questions on Jupiter. So if we're getting rid of the worksheet, it can't just be one question. It's going to be many questions on Jupiter about the video, but video, questions on Jupiter. It's 100% of your grade going forward. Said I'd wear a funny hat each class. I'm going to wear a cowboy hat this time. This was my dad's. We'll get started on Age of Exploration. This is just going to be kind of an overview, this PowerPoint. And we're going to very briefly cover something called the Scientific Revolution, very briefly. And then we'll get into details next class. So in this unit, we'll learn about increased global interactions. We spent this school year learning about Europe, and then learning about the Middle East, and then learning about Africa, and then now with increased travel, the world's going to start to come together. Increased global interaction accelerates innovation in cultures. Global interaction promotes the spread of disease as well, so a more connected world is not always a good thing. And competition for resources affects economic relationships between nations. Okay, so economics, so how people spend money. The Age of Exploration was a time period when Europeans began to explore the rest of the world. It's from the perspective of the Europeans. They are exploring more outside of Europe. Obviously, starting with the Crusades, moving down into the Middle East, and then after that, a little pause, but then really exploring the rest of the world after that. So, obviously, the parts of the world they were exploring already had people there. They didn't discover America. There were millions of Native Americans living there. They didn't discover India or China. We learned throughout this year these are very populous places with their own culture and their own everything going on. The Age of Exploration, it's Europeans discovering these places. The Age of Exploration followed the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation. And actually, a lot of these took place at kind of the same time. We'll go over a timeline in a little bit. Renaissance improvements in map-making, shipbuilding, and navigation made this exploration possible. And the religious strife of the Reformation and the motivation from that drove the desire to move away from the old world, the European world, into new places. Okay. So why would European countries want to explore other lands? They wanted an all-water route with which to trade with China. So going by land, backing up just to the map, going by land from Europe to China, believe it or not, even though this looks like a shorter distance, actually took longer than sailing around. And they were trying to find a shortcut because sailing also took a long time. But trading with China was a big motivator. Religious motivation. There was a lot of, as we learned from the Reformation, a lot of violence in Europe and strife and religions fighting each other. And so people wanted to escape violence. And then we learned about missionaries last class. Some churches wanted to send their missionaries out to new places to get new people to convert to Christianity. Science and technology from the Renaissance improved sea travel. We talked about inventions of the Renaissance. And mercantilism, we're going to spend a whole class on that in a few weeks. New ways for people to get rich. What did monarchs and kings, same thing, hope to gain by spending money on exploration? Obviously, they wanted to get rich. They wanted to find new places to get rich, gold, glory. They wanted to be famous. The king who sponsored the discovery of whatever place, and God. Obviously, the religious aspect was there, as we talked about. Okay, increased trade and gaining more territory means more wealth, fame and power, glory, getting famous for being the king who expanded the kingdom or discovered this new place for that kingdom, and obviously spread of religion. You can always try to learn a new hobby while you're at home. I don't know if scuba diving in front of a TV really works, but something you can try. So here's a timeline of events. Here's where things kind of line up of what we've been talking about the past few weeks. We talked about the Renaissance. That took a long time. So here's Donatello. We talked about the sculptor Donatello. We talked about the invention of the printing press. Okay, 1452. Leonardo da Vinci didn't come around until 1498. Michelangelo's famous sculpture of David, we talked about the musculature and that very famous sculpture, that was 1501. Well, the Protestant Reformation didn't happen until 1517. So the Protestant Reformation kind of happens towards the end of the Renaissance. But in the middle of it, there's still more Renaissance coming on in the 1520s and 30s. And then Christopher Columbus discovers the New World, discovers America. In 1492, as we know, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Well, the printing press was 1452, but Leonardo da Vinci didn't paint the last number until 1498. So the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation and the Age of Discovery are all happening kind of in the same 100-year period. Here's another timetable looking at the 2000 years. Year 0 over here somewhere, the birth and death of Jesus. The year 2000, not 2016 anymore, it's 2020, but here we are today. The Dark Ages, after the fall of Rome, before the Renaissance and a rediscovery of Greek and Roman architecture and science and developing new science. The Dark Ages in Europe took a long time. Okay, so year 600, 800, 1000. But then all the stuff we've been talking about and are going to talk about for the rest of the year, this all happens in this short 200-year span between 1400 and 1600, where all these different religious and scientific and exploration things are happening. This all happens really in this tight window, historically, looking at a 2,000-year period. So normally the scientific revolution would be a whole week of class, at least. But because of distance learning and we're short on time, we're just going to spend the rest of this class on it before we get back to exploration. And I want to take a little time with it because we can't have the age of exploration without the scientific revolution. It helps make the exploration part possible. So what was the scientific revolution? What was it? The beginning of modern science. The scientific method. Not just believing in something and thinking it's true, having a method with which to test things. You should have learned this in science class, how to test hypotheses, right? Creating the technologies that built the modern world and allowed for exploration. And these leading figures. I cut some of these out. Then I apologize, I yawned. Then we would normally cover. But Francis Bacon, Copernicus. We talked about Galileo and Copernicus a little bit when we started the Renaissance. So we're going to talk about some of these people now. Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon, this is him, proposed inductive reasoning and facts over deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, to deduce is to go big to small, is to deduce, okay? Deductive reasoning ruled the world for thousands of years, from the Greeks up through the scientific revolution. Okay? Deductive reasoning is starting your idea and then finding details to support it. So I think cowboy hats look cool. Let me get evidence to support that idea. Francis Bacon said, no, start with a fact and build on top of it. Start with, I observe, this is how plants behave. What can I do to test that theory? The modern science, what we would call modern science, he created the scientific method. Observe, research, hypothesize, experiment, collect data, analyze, right? So you should have learned that in science class. It started with this guy, Sir Francis Bacon, Scientific Revolution. Okay, whoops. Copernicus, we talked about him a little bit back when we were still together in person in school. The heliocentric universe, so a sun-centric universe. He wrote a book on revolutions of heavenly spheres. Heavenly being up in the sky, spheres, he meant planets, on revolutions of planets. Okay, sun, he had this crazy idea that the sun is the center of the universe, not the earth, and this was a page from his book. And he, based on what he had at the time, he said, this is how I think the universe looks. And that looks pretty similar to how we think the universe looks now, doesn't it? Sun, Mercury, Mars, Earth, etc. Okay. Oh, come on. No. Galileo. We talked about him, kind of a weird-looking guy. Invented the telescope. He invented the pendulum clock, the thermometer. Okay. Discovered speed of acceleration for gravity. He wrote an equation, and it kind of became the start for modern physics, right? So that's a big deal. But the telescope became a very big deal, both to observe and test. Notice Copernicus, 1473 to 1543. Later, Galileo, 1564 to 1642. The telescope to observe what Copernicus said the universe looked like. And also the telescope became important for exploration because the telescope became the looking scope that the guys on the ships would use to look for land and stuff like that. So important innovation. Sir Isaac Newton, probably one of the most important and famous scientists of all time, basically invented modern calculus, modern physics, wrote the book on most modern math. Very famous guy. So wrote equations and stuff to tie up the loose ends of Galileo, Kepler, some of these other guys, to find the laws of motion. When you get to high school science, you're going to do experiments with the laws of motion. There's a famous story that he sat under a tree one day as a young man and was reading, and an apple fell from the tree on him. I'm pointing to it in this picture, and this painting, thinking about that. And he said, why do things that go up must come down? And that's when he sat down and started trying to prove the laws of physics. What goes up must come down, right? And he wrote equations for these things. Optics. Why is light a spectrum? Why do rainbows exist? Can I make a rainbow? Can I test how optics work, how light enters the human eye and becomes images? Very famous guy. Did a lot of advancements on laws of motion, gravity, optics, super famous guy. So the efforts of all these people combined, there's some we left out, a lot we left out, but this time period, 1500s to 1700s, most notably starting with Sir Francis Bacon, 1560s or so, through Isaac Newton into the early 1700s, the scientific era. The era of no longer just thinking ideas, but testing them and using instruments to test theories. Okay, developed the modern scientific method, came up with the idea that the universe can be ordered according to natural laws and things we can observe, not just religion. Discovered scientific laws that can be discovered by human reason, mechanical views of the universe. A big step away from an only religion-centered universe. This step helped move us into the modern world and also helped fuel the discoveries going on at the time, at the age of discovery. So that's why I wanted to cover it quickly before we get into more specifics about the age of discovery next week. So what do you do next? So remember that, remember to make things simple. No longer are we going to have Google Docs going forward. The old ones are still due, but no more worksheets going forward, just videos, and then several questions on Jupiter. Because that's 100% of your grade going forward, I do want you to take it seriously. I will try to go easy on grading, but I need effort from everybody. You guys need to show that you're watching the videos and thinking about the ideas, right? The videos are 15 minutes long. The questions on Jupiter should only take you 10 or 15 minutes. Combined, it's a half hour of work for each class. 2 history classes a week, it's an hour a week. Out of your whole entire week, 1 hour a week spent on thinking and writing about history. So hopefully everyone can accomplish it. If you're having any trouble at all, you can always message me for questions. I will do my best to help you. Good luck, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. And thank you for your participation as always. Take care of yourselves.